Hi everybody, this is Francisco Gil-White for Arutz and Management of Reality in our joint programming. And today I have the honor and the pleasure of welcoming again to my show Mordechai קידר, great expert on the Middle East, on the Arab world, and in particular on the Gulf and the Emirates. So I want to talk to him about what I fear for Dubai might be the collapse of the Dubai narrative and the context that is producing the collapse of the Dubai narrative. Mordechai קידר, thank you for joining me again.
Pleasure.
Okay, so my first question to you is simply, what do you make of the exchange of fire between the US and Iran in the last few weeks? Because this is what's hurting Dubai. It has been hurting Dubai ever since there was this, what do they call it, Fury, Operation Epic Fury, right? And first of all, what's been going on over the last few weeks, I mean, it hurts Dubai, but it doesn't seem to be hurting Iran that much. So the impression that a lot of people get in the West is that Trump is being very macho and he's really showing Iran and so on and so forth. In many channels, this gets reported as if the U.S. is really getting, very serious, real business against Iran. But I've been studying the question more carefully with experts who understand this, and you're an expert. And what I'm learning is that actually the U.S. is hitting targets that don't hurt Iran that much. That Iran has built a very sophisticated underground network of tunnels and almost underground cities, and that's where they have most of their hardware and also their nuclear program and so forth. And it's very, very difficult to destroy that. And the US hasn't even really been trying. So the exchange of fire in the last few weeks looks more like a show than a real attempt at hurting the Iranian regime on the one hand. What do you think?
I would rather describe it as a foreplay by a macho.
Okay.
Who doesn't really want to go forward, to remain at the foreplay and nothing but.
I see.
And this is, when you analyze on one side what Trump says,
right,
and on the other side what he's doing, it's actually this. He's a big macho, which says a lot of things, but when it comes to real things, it's only the foreplay and nothing but.
So it's a lot of bluster, but no real action to destroy the Iranian regime.
This is what the Emirates are seeing.
I see.
Because they have the Iranians behind them for many years.
Yes.
And they are afraid of the Iranians for many years. And they hoped that this war will actually lead to a liberation.
Right.
From this Iranian threat.
Right.
But what they see is that Iran becomes a wounded bear,
right,
who is much more dangerous than a bear who is okay.
Well, it seems that Iran is more powerful now. Before Epic Fury, they didn't control the Strait of Hormuz. Now they control the Strait of Hormuz.
The Strait of Hormuz is actually a way how to hold the world in its throat.
Right.
Economic throat is really economic. The bottleneck. Okay, this is the bottleneck.
The choke point, as they say.
Right. And this is what they do, the Iranians, without any restriction. Means they feel that they can do it. Yeah. They do it because, yes, they can. And
well, Trump is allowing it.
Well, Trump, I think he's looking for ways how to liberate the Hormuz Strait from the grip.
Couldn't he do it in an hour? Come on, Mordechai.
I highly doubt.
Really?
Because, look, in order to control the straits, all they need is some drones somewhere hidden in a cave and being launched against ships. That's all.
Well, but isn't it true that the war effort of the United States has been very different, for example, from what they did against Serbia or against Iraq? In those cases, they went straight for the production of energy. They went straight for the telecommunications infrastructure. Here, they haven't touched that at all.
Look, the big difference between Iraq, twice, once in 1991 and the second time in 2003.
Yeah.
What defined those two assaults on Iraq was a ground operation. a grand ground operation.
Well, that's a big difference. I agree.
The strikes from the air were only the preparations.
Yes.
In order to weaken them. But the real thing was, or the main dish was the ground operation. Here, you don't see, maybe somebody reported that there are some thousands of Marines heading to the Gulf to be ready to something, which nobody really knows. But heavy, big, wide ground operation, which is aiming at occupying parts of Iran, we don't see this. Tanks, artillery, you don't see it. And that's why the Iranians can continue to do whatever they like in the Hormuz. And not only this.
Well, but Mordechai, it seems to me, even if they're not going to do a ground operation, let's assume they're never going to do it. Let's just assume that.
Okay.
Even so, if you really want to weaken the Iranian regime, you would do what you do in any other war, which is go after their energy production, which they haven't done.
Look, I think that Trump has limits to what he wants to do to the world economy. It doesn't serve him. Because when prices of oil rocket up in Africa because of what happens in the Gulf, it also goes up in the United States of America because of it's a one market. He doesn't need this towards the midterm elections. And these midterm elections, the Iranians know very well that the man has no patience. And they work according to the Quranic verse which says that in Allah ma'asabirin. Allah is with those who have the ability to suffer for a long time. And this is what they are. They are in a jihad, don't forget. They are not in a war of control only. They are not in a war to hegemony on the Gulf, not only. They are in a divine mission in order to spread their mind all over the world. And now they are in a fight against the big Satan. And just, you have to understand, in their terminology, Satan is the enemy of Allah. They are the people of Allah who fight the enemy of Allah. This is a jihad, this is a religious war. And they are in a religious war, and Allah has no white flag.
Okay,
Allah cannot raise a white flag because Allah has nothing like this. And there is no way that Allah will surrender in front of the American swine eaters and the Israeli Jewish wine drinkers.
Okay, I want to come back to the consequences for Dubai, but let me just make a really quick announcement. Arutz Tov Plus is organizing a variety of lectures on security, law, Judaism, and the Middle East, presented by some of Israel's leading speakers. If you want to see these lectures, you can watch on Tov channel online from anywhere in the world. And to purchase tickets, just click on the link below the video player, and you'll be able to come see these lectures. They're coming soon. Thank you. Okay, so it seems to me that we are nearing the collapse of the entire Dubai narrative, because the violence that has taken place in the Gulf ever since Epic Fury began, and now in the last few weeks we've seen Iran attack Kuwait and I think they attacked Bahrain or some other place, right? And it seems to me that Dubai needs everybody to think that Dubai is a safe place, it's a stable place. And because they don't have oil, they don't have gas. What they have is a financial center and a real estate
Business.
Bubble. Yeah, exactly. They're a safe place for rich people's money. It's supposed to be. But now it seems to me if all that Dubai has to offer is a lot of heat and sand and maybe some danger from rockets, rich people are not going to be so excited about parking themselves there.
Well, I think, on the contrary, that maybe now, when prices might be low in Dubai, is the time to purchase real estate.
If you think it's going to recover.
Well, investment also always has some kind of question mark above them. You hope. Look, those who buy offices or office space in Dubai, they don't buy it instead of food. They have what to eat.
So you think that you think Dubai is going to recover? You think the narrative about the inevitability of Dubai, you think that's going to come back?
I think that in the end of the day, things will settle in a way or another. With Iran more powerful, with Iran less powerful. Don't forget, Iran wants to come back to the situation of stability.
Iran?
Iran.
Uh-huh.
They want to control the Gulf as they want, with stability, that everybody pays, for passing the Hormuz Straits after Iran succeeded to force itself on the Hormuz Straits as the owner of the place, means territorial water, instead of being international waters, because they don't see the international community coming against it. Look, the only country, or maybe two countries, are actually not challenging Iran today. The United States and potentially Israel, because Israel is not part of the problem now. No other country in the world. Where is Britain? Where is France? Where is European country? Where is Australia? Where is the normal world? The capital world, the democratic world, where all of them.
But it sounds like you're making the argument for the collapse of the Dubai narrative, because if Iran remains powerful and it's threatening the Gulf states, then everybody who's in Dubai is going to feel insecure.
Look, if you zoom out to what we see today, is actually there is a struggle between two axes. The axis of evil against the axis of democracy. Means, who are the evil? Iran, China, Russia, North Korea. Okay, these are the alliance which fights America and hello, anybody home? Maybe Israel in the former rounds. That's all. The West is dead. When the Iranians see, and they understand what's happening, Britain is not in the picture. France is not in the picture. So where are all, and where rest of Western Europe, where are all, and they are all suffering because of the prices of import. Because now everything which they import from China, from Japan, from Vietnam, from South Korea, everything has to go around Africa.
Right.
Because of the Bab el-Mandeb Straits,
right.
The Houthis. They pay more for gas, they pay more for anything which they use, which comes from the East. And where are they?
Are you convinced that Donald Trump really wants to regain control of the Strait of Hormuz? It doesn't seem like he really wants that.
First of all, he wants to be viewed as somebody who did something good for the world. Because otherwise, everybody will look at him as a loser. And
well, I mean, everybody's concluding that the U.S. lost the war.
Trump cannot afford being viewed as the loser, especially towards the midterm elections.
So what are you predicting, Mordechai? What's going to happen?
Look, I am not an expert about Trump, what he's doing, and I doubt if there is anyone in the world. Because when Trump says something in the morning, at noon he changes something.
But if he cannot afford to be seen as a loser coming up to the midterm elections, the prediction should be that he's going to discipline Iran. Is that your prediction?
He talks about it, that he will break their bones.
Is he going to do it?
I'm talking about the last day or 2 days. He actually accelerated his narrative or his expressions against Iran. Mm-hmm. If I were the Iranians, I would take him seriously because he is losing his patience.
They don't seem very afraid. Do you think they look afraid?
Look, there is a gap between how they feel and how they look like. Because their image as people who never get excited, people who never get angry, people who keep poker face all the time, this is a cultural issue. You never see them.
So you think they are afraid?
Yes.
You think the fact that they're bombing ships in the Strait of Hormuz and attacking the Gulf states, that's consistent with them being afraid?
In the short term, they are afraid. In the long term, they are more than sure that they will win. The only question is how they pass the shorter range. Because still they have to pay for the, for the IRGC, they have to pay salaries. China will not wait for them with energy. China will look for different sources, and China will find.
how important is, coming back to Dubai, how important is the model, the airline model, Dubai as a hub for very long flights from Asia into Europe and so forth? How important is that model to the survival of the Dubai narrative, and do you see a big danger there? Because I've been reading that the major airlines are all beginning to reroute so as to avoid Dubai. If that becomes a permanent thing, Dubai is finished as an airline hub.
It's more than the airlines. Dubai has a free trade zone.
Yeah.
Free trade zone means a place which everybody wants to send his products and to buy whatever it needs, because there's no tax. This is also in danger. Because in order to have...
Yeah, you need the travelers to come in, right?
Ships, and now the Hormuz straits are blocked.
Right.
This is much worse than the airport. Because airport can change, because once things get settled...
Well, but they're investing all of their money in the new airport, right? They're building a gigantic airport.
No doubt, Dubai, not only Dubai, Abu Dhabi as well, and the other Emirates as well.
Yeah.
They are now are in a big challenge.
How about Qatar? Has this been affecting Qatar negatively? How are they doing?
Qatar actually is, I think, is the biggest loser.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because don't forget, Qatar for many years was in bed with the Iranians.
Yes.
First of all, they share the same gas field, the biggest gas field in the world.
Yeah.
Between Qatar and...
it's gigantic.
I don't know how much they can produce now because of the problems in the Gulf.
You know, in other words, they can't ship it out?
I don't know.
Huh.
Because if they can, they wouldn't say. They wouldn't tell.
I see.
So maybe in some kind of a secret way they continue. But don't forget that the facilities on the ground of exporting the gas were hit.
Right.
I think Israel hit it a few months ago. So I don't know to what extent these facilities are functioning.
Up and running, yeah, okay.
So I really don't know. However, don't forget that Qatar was the ally of Iran for many years, and therefore Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Bahrain, and Egypt actually put a siege.
I remember.
On Qatar between mid 2017 and beginning of 2021.
Right.
In 3.5 years. And they didn't do it only because of Al Jazeera. It's because of the collaboration between Qatar and Iran.
Explain the paradox to our public. Qatar aligned with Iran, Qatar home of the most important U.S. military base outside of the United States. How do we explain this?
Well, Qatar tries to play it in all the directions.
But why would the U.S. tolerate that?
Because they got it for free. The airbase, the Udeid in Qatar, was built by Qatar.
Yes, but Mordechai, in a different show, you told me that in less than 20 minutes, the U.S. could conquer Qatar from that base. So it seems to me the U.S. could impose its will on Qatar. Why is Qatar allied with Iran?
Because much of the Qatari money is running in the veins of the American economy.
Still, you can conquer Qatar in 20 minutes.
Add to this the fact that Qatar bought many politicians, media people, influencers, economy people.
And the president? They bought the president?
Real estate.
Did they buy President Trump?
I don't know. But real estate tycoons like Witkopf, you know, they
yeah, Trump's buddies.
$650 million in order to save him from a fiasco.
Well, but that suggests then that the U.S. became part of the Iranian axis. Is that what you're saying?
Factually, it could be, but not intentionally. Qatar actually buys everything which moves and everything.
Wait a minute, Mordechai. Are you telling me that the people running the United States who are playing the game of world power do these kinds of things unintentionally? Is that really your model?
No, they just turn their look to the other direction in order not to see what Qatar is doing. Look, let me give you an example. There is an organization, CARE, in the United States of America, Committee on American Islamic Relations. This is, as much as I heard, is a Muslim Brotherhood organization.
Yes, CARE, certainly.
And sponsored, as much as I heard, by Qatar. So,
like many other organizations,
many
right?
others, yeah. President Trump declared that the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, Jordan, and maybe in other countries as well are illegal organizations. How can he leave CARE to function in the United States of America?
Good point.
If he thinks that Muslim Brotherhood is a terror organization, how come he leaves CARE to function in the United States? Okay, now I think Texas declared that CARE is a terror organization, and maybe now the federation will do it as well. So what CARE did, they actually wrote all their assets, real estate, whatever they have, on some kind of waqf, means holy donations organizations, which are not subject to confiscation by the government.
Oh, I see.
I read something like this. I'm not sure about the details.
Okay.
So what do you think? That the Minister of Finance in the United States doesn't know it? Of course they know.
Of course they know.
But they are afraid to aggravate the Qataris too much, because the Qataris might draw their investments in the United States.
I find this model very hard to accept, Mordechai. The model that says that the U.S. is afraid of Qatar. Again, you told me that within 20 minutes from the Al Udeid base, the United States could conquer Qatar. Why don't they?
Look,
if they don't like what Qatar is doing, why don't they?
Even the Saudis. The Saudi Minister of Defense, I think, his deputy, once said that if we, Saudis, if we want to conquer Qatar, we will not need tanks. We will send our jeeps.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So, because what Qatar is, from the military point of view...
Well, but you're making my point for me.
Okay. But apparently the Qatari money, which is running in the veins of many economies in the world, they are actually running the world.
Well, listen, when Adolf...
They bought the Mondial, the soccer games of 2022, which were in Qatar. They bribed people from FIFA headquarters, and people went to jail because of this. Still, Qatar hosted the games.
Well, but one model says that's because they're afraid of Qatar, which seems to be the one you're defending. The other one is they're allied with Qatar. It's not the same model. So think about Hitler. Adolf Hitler in World War II. He was running a country, Germany, that was in financially bad shape. The countries around Germany were in much better economic shape when World War II started. What did Hitler do? He used his army to take their money. He took their money. So these banks had a lot more money than Germany did. Hitler just went and took it because he could. Why doesn't the U.S. just conquer Qatar if they really don't like what Qatar is doing?
The way to do it is not to conquer Qatar. All you have to do is to do what they did in Venezuela.
Why don't they do that?
To take the Emir,
right,
and to tell all the others, now you start doing what we tell you.
Why don't they take the Emir?
Everything. Otherwise, you're going to follow the Emir. Okay? This is the way how you do it in an elegant way. Apparently, Trump didn't think that Qatar deserves the Venezuela treatment yet. Because he has bigger problems with Iran.
Wouldn't you say that Trump's behavior has been extremely favorable towards Qatar? He accepted the airplane from the Qataris. He has all these real estate investments, and his son-in-law does too, with them. When Netanyahu made this weak attempt to try to kill a few Hamas leaders that Qatar had been protecting, Trump threw a gigantic tantrum, and he forced Netanyahu to apologize to the Emir of Qatar, who is the intellectual author of the butchery on October 7th, 2023. All of that suggests to me that Trump is very partial to Qatar, that he's not upset at Qatar at all.
You can add much more, that Qatar supported Hamas.
Yes.
And Hamas, don't forget, is defined in the United States of America as a terror organization. How come during the 4 years, the Trump's first term, how come he said nothing to Qatar about this?
Well, you're making my point for me.
Okay. Another thing, Qatar and Turkey Qatar is protected by Turkey,
Right.
because in those 3.5 years of
Muslim Brotherhood.
of siege between mid-17 and 21, Turkey actually sent troops to Qatar in order to make sure that the Saudis don't send their jeeps in order to take Qatar over.
Interesting.
So, and this is something which the United States wouldn't, I think, like to have, as a Muslim Brotherhood country like Turkey protects Qatar. So, there are many things connected to Qatar which America actually accepted. Maybe not happily, but shut their eyes in order not to see the Qatari behavior, especially vis-a-vis the Muslim Brotherhood, means supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. And Qatar is
Okay,
knows how to play it in all the directions by shutting people's mouths with dollars or euros.
Let's talk about Kuwait for a second. So recently Kuwait also got attacked, and apparently they returned fire, didn't they?
Yeah, well, there were some missiles launched from Kuwait.
There were.
Now, Americans said it was Kuwaitis, and the Kuwaitis said it's the Americans. So, no, I really don't know who launched these missiles. However, from all the countries in the Gulf, Kuwait is the only one, in addition to Iraq, of course, that has a border with Iran.
Right.
All the others have the Gulf in between. And Iran did not even try to hide their intentions to take Kuwait over.
Ha!
A Kuwaiti politician who used to be the head of the international relations of Kuwait in the Kuwaiti parliament headed a delegation which went to Iran, and they met with the head of the international relations of Iranians parliament, Khatami, when he was still in the parliament. And Khatami stood. That's what he described.
That's Mohammed Khatami, right?
Yeah, Mohammed Khatami, who became later the president.
Right.
So when the Kuwaiti minister describes, when they sat in the room, Khatami stood near a map of the Middle East, and he at some point put his hand on Kuwait, saying, "This is our land." And he's saying it to the Kuwaiti delegation.
Wow. Pretty bold.
They didn't even hide their intentions to take Kuwait over. Don't forget, Kuwait is full of oil.
Right.
And by the way, this is why Kuwait is an independent state, although historically it was part of Iraq.
Right.
And Saddam Hussein had a very strong point by claiming that Kuwait belongs to Iraq and invaded Kuwait in August of 1990.
1991.
1990.
Oh, 1990.
January 91 was
1990.
the war.
Right.
So he had a point. He had a real point. Historically, Kuwait belongs to... But Britain created Kuwait in order to make sure that the oil of Kuwait will continue to go to Europe, because they were not so sure about what happens in Iraq. So this is the story. Kuwait is shivering of fear from Iran, because they know what will happen to them if the American shield will be removed from...
Okay, so it seems like your prediction is, unless the U.S. really gets serious about Iran, the Gulf is in big trouble.
The Gulf is doomed to live or to continue to live under the Iranian threat until the Iranian regime collapses.
Okay, we will leave it there. Thank you for your predictions, Mordechai קידר. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you so much.
Everybody, this is Francisco Gil-White with Mordechai קידר for ערוץ טוב in Management of Reality in our joint programming. Thank you for joining us. See you soon.
חדש בערוץ טוב. מועדון היחידה מזמין אתכם להרצאה חדשה בכל חודש עם מיטב המרצים. אנשי הביטחון, החוקרים והפרשנים על כל הסוגיות שמעצבות את המציאות בישראל ובעולם. דוקטור מרדכי קידר, מושיק קוברסקי, האלוף יצחק בריק, פרופסור טליה איינורן, אליהו יוסיאן, אמיר גלאור, שלום בן חנן ועוד רבים וטובים. בכל חודש במועדון הגולה בפתח תקווה. חברי מועדון היחידה נהנים ממחיר מיוחד בהרצאות הפרונטליות ומאפשרות לצפות בכל ההרצאות גם בדיגיטל ללא עלות נוספת. כל הפרטים בקישור שמתחת לנגן.